Hello everybody, welcome to the Empressive channel. Beyonce and Janet Jackson are two legends in the industry, and they are some of the most influential female artists of all time. One thing that is interesting about Beyonce and Janet is the unspoken tension between them. And some of you may wonder, Janet and Beyonce had tension? Some would probably say they did. Now, it was rumored that Janet Jackson was very upset about Beyonce's comments about her family. But prior to Beyonce making those comments, Janet was openly a Beyonce supporter. She was a fan of her and her group, Destiny's Child. Beyonce, of course, was and still is a big fan of Janet Jackson, and she has always credited Janet for being one of her biggest influences. In 2001, MTV dedicated a whole special to Janet, and Beyonce, Kelly Rowland, and Michelle Williams gave her a tribute by singing one of her hit songs, Let's Wait a While.
When I was younger, I was in a dance group. We were called the Smooth Dancers. And we were straight up Janet Jackson. We did Rhythm Nation, we did Escapade, we did it all. And we used to win up everything at the competitions because we learned it from Miss Janet.
Let's wait a while before it's too late. Let's wait a while. Let's wait a while before it's too late. Let's wait a while before we go too far.
What the girls did, I loved it. I loved it. They sound great. It trips me out really bad, but I'm just overwhelmed right now.
Janet also showed her support to Beyonce and Destiny's Child when they released their album Survivor.
We have another mystery guest who I'm hoping you can guess who it is, who is a role model of yours, someone you grew up listening to or just as inspired by as I think we all were, and I know I was. Hear the voice and then tell me if you think you know who it is. Mystery guest.
Hey, you guys, you recently performed one of my songs on television.
You think you know who that is?
It's
Miss
Janet
Jackson.
Jackson!
Let's see if you guys are right.
She's not here, is she?
No. Girl, let's see if you're right first. Is it Janet?
No, no. Yeah.
Well, I hope you got it right. It's me, Janet. I just want to say it was great seeing you in Europe, and I wish you all the best of luck on your new project. Not that you guys need it, but good luck.
Yeah. I'm so sorry to do that to you guys. You thought she was behind the silhouette. You almost lost your mind. I'm sorry. Some of it's not going to be back there.
We
Only
love you,
sometimes.
Janet.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
When Beyonce made her solo debut in 2003, Janet still showed support, and also Beyonce once again credited Janet as one of her influences.
Beyonce, she's talented, very talented. I've been a fan of Destiny's Child and Beyonce's, and she's doing her thing.
Yes,
and
she is.
I'm very happy for her.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Janet. I grew up watching her.
Janet Jackson with Control.
Yeah.
Wasn't. What woman that wants to be a singer or performer wasn't influenced by her? She's incredible. I know even for my last video, I watched all of her videos because I always loved how she would take theater and mix it with the streets and some of that choreography and kind of mix it with her own little flavor, how she interacted with her bands. Everything was wonderful. And I respect that she acted and, sang.
Incredible. Jackson.
Now, Beyonce looking up to Janet is really no surprise because Janet was one of the trailblazers of her generation, and she broke down barriers for a lot of female Black artists in the industry. She broke down barriers for female artists, period. And she, along with her brothers Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, changed the scope of music and set the blueprint. Janet checked a lot of boxes. She was not only a singer, songwriter, performer, and actress, but she also was a dancer, and she was a style icon, and she incorporated a lot of trends and also incorporated a lot of heavy choreography in her music videos. Until this day, people are still inspired by her work. Janet Jackson is super influential in her own right, and she probably is one of the most underrated because many people might not recognize her impact, but it's clear that she has inspired many, and we know that she has inspired Beyonce. And even though Beyonce is different from Janet in a lot of ways, One can also see where she has taken some pages from Janet's book. During her I Am Sasha Fierce era, she utilized black and white visuals, which were reminiscent of the aesthetic that Janet used for her visuals for Rhythm Nation. And just like Janet, Beyonce began to take more risk with her image. She became more sexually liberated, more in control, and a lot bolder. And she broke free from the cookie cutter pop girl image that she once had, which was similar to how Janet evolved as well. And also, Beyonce has taken some inspiration from Janet's performing style. Now, in 2004, things began to shift in Beyonce and Janet Jackson's careers. Beyonce at this point was hailed as the new black female pop supreme, and Janet Jackson was already cemented as an icon herself. But at the Super Bowl, things took an interesting turn for Janet. While Beyonce was praised for her brilliant vocal performance of the national anthem, Janet was scrutinized for her controversial performance during the halftime show. During the halftime show, Justin Timberlake ripped off Janet's garment and exposed one of her breasts. Now, this could have been brushed off as a simple blunder. However, this controversy almost ruined Janet's career. The CEO of CBS at the time, named Les Moonves, was furious with Janet, and Janet was forced to apologize. Janet did release one apology video. However, that wasn't enough for Les Moonves. He wanted Janet to apologize to him personally. Now, Les Moonves does have a sordid history of sexually harassing women, so it's possible that he wanted Janet to do more than just apologize, if you get my drift. But Janet had her pride and she didn't do that. And this made him so furious to the point that he went out of his way to blackball Janet for 10 years. He had her blackballed from the Grammys that same year, and also he had her blackballed from Viacom stations like VH1 and MTV. And this was a nightmare for Janet because the Super Bowl was supposed to help bring publicity to her album Damita Jo, but her album did not do as well as her previous albums because she was boycotted. So at this point, Janet was losing her steam. Even though she was respected, her career wasn't getting the same acknowledgement as before. The industry seemed to have moved on, and they were looking at artists like Beyonce and Britney Spears to fill in that Janet gap. And this is a common occurrence in the industry where they usher in the new artists to replace the old. And Janet more than likely noticed this shift. Now, when Beyonce and Janet posed on the cover of Essence with Mary J. Blige, things did get a bit awkward behind the scenes.
Well, Beyonce, Janet, and Mary. Apparently, the behind-the-scenes controversy subsided. Beyonce reportedly only agreed to the shoot if she could stand in the middle for the cover. But the editors had already promised the position to Janet Jackson.
Beyonce's team wanted her to be in the center, and most likely this wasn't Beyonce's request, but it still was a bit awkward that her team would request it, considering that she was the newest artist of the bunch. Luckily, that awkwardness did not affect the shoot because apparently Janet, Beyonce, and Mary J. Blige were all smiles and all complimentary towards each other.
In the issue, we find out Janet thinks Beyonce is doing everything professionally and personally just perfectly.
Janet complimented Beyonce on staying grounded despite her soaring fame. Beyonce says Mary is all heart and emotion and she admires her. And Mary admits that Janet was always her inspiration. Aw, isn't that special?
In 2006, things would get awkward between Beyonce and Janet because people wanted to compare the two. The comparisons got pretty heavy because Beyonce and Janet were gearing up to release their albums around the same time. Around this time, Beyonce was releasing B-Day and Janet was releasing her album 20-Year-Old.
Now, Certified is the show where you, the fans, decide. And this month, we're going to find out who's the certified triple threat between former Destiny's Child Beyonce and Miss Jackson, if you're nasty, Janet herself. Best Boyfriend Collabos goes to Beyonce And the second category brings the drama, and that one goes to Miss Beyonce again. And now our third category, which is Dance Fever, goes to Miss Janet Jackson. And the bonus category, who's really in control? Miss Janet Jackson again. All right, now we're gonna get the final tally, which includes the votes from your remote, remember, and from our Singular Connect in the streets. And the winner is, Miss Beyonce knows. You, the fans, decided that Beyonce is the certified triple threat. Now let's hear from Miss Beyonce herself.
Hello, I'm Beyonce, and I just want to thank all of the fans for all of their support and love, and thank you for certifying me #1.
The comparisons were a bit odd, considering that both Janet and Beyonce are two different artists and they come from two different generations. But this was a prime example of how the industry likes to pit the newer artists against the old. And it was rumored that Janet did not like the comparisons, and she did not care for the fact that people were diminishing her to uplift Beyonce. According to the Chicago Tribune, Janet allegedly said this about the comparisons: "It's stupid. I don't understand why we both can't do what we do. Why can't we both shine and make great music?" Janet's boyfriend at the time, Jermaine Dupri, also chimed in on the comparisons. He first called Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera copycats, and when talking about Beyonce, he said, "Only Janet records sound like her. I always look and think, where's Beyonce gonna be in 20 years? It's hard for me to visualize. I don't put them on the same plane." Both Janet and Beyonce did end up addressing Jermaine's comments, and also they addressed the comparisons.
Okay, I'll ask you about this because it's also been in the press too. Jermaine has made some statements, and on your behalf, because I guess he's holding you down and loves you, but he says things like, copycats of you, or I think there was a quote about Beyonce, and maybe these weren't true. They were written in print. I don't know if he said them exactly. It was a quote about where will Beyonce be in 20 years, and there's been a few statements that he's made like that.
I actually heard something like that on the radio when it was said, and the way they had said it on the radio wasn't what he said. And it threw me for a loop, because I said, that doesn't sound like him. I said, someone twisted that. And it wasn't what he had said. He says he doesn't understand how someone can compare a 2-year career versus a 20-year career. That's really what he said. I mean, I've really done this for a very long time. People always asking me, do you feel you have to compete with the kids out there today? And I don't. I've been where they are. This is just their second, third album. This is my 10th.
Right.
And I'm not saying that they won't be last. You know, it's not an easy thing to say 20 years later and still have people anticipate the work that you create. There's a lot to be said about that, and I'm just very thankful.
People have been comparing, because her album is coming around the same time, Janet Jackson and Beyonce.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's crazy, just because I admire Janet Jackson. I mean, when I was a kid, I tried to do her dance routines. Right. And I still, when I did my record, I had her videos playing, because she's inspirational to me. She's been doing this for 20 years.
Right.
I feel like I've been doing this for a long time. She's been doing it for 20 years. She's in her own league. You can't call me her peer.
Right.
I haven't earned that yet. I have to do this 10 more years. So I don't think, if anything, I admire her. I don't think that we should be compared to each other.
I'm sorry that I have to bring this up, but I do, because it was a public statement. Jermaine Dupri made some statements saying, I guess he was kind of rocking with his girl.
And he should.
And as he should.
As he should.
And when people have been comparing the two of you, and he said, well, Janet has been doing her thing. Let's see where Beyonce is in 20 years. He made a statement that was something like that. It was a little sideways.
You know what? God bless you, Jermaine, baby. God bless you. That's all I'll say.
Nice, B. Nice.
As you could hear, Beyonce has always been very careful and gracious with her statements, and she always spoke very highly of Janet Jackson. However, there was a point where she slipped up and said something about Janet's family that rubbed her the wrong way. In her interview with Elle magazine, she said, "I grew up upper class. private school. My dad had a Jaguar. We're African American and we work together as a family, so people assume we're like the Jacksons. But I didn't have parents using me to get out of a bad situation. Now, it was rumored that Janet was really upset about these comments. According to the National Enquirer, take the source as you will, the insider said yes, Janet and the Jackson family came from Gary, Indiana, and there were a time they barely squeaked by, but Janet has many loving memories and is incensed that Beyonce would make a crack like that. Janet wanted to know why Beyonce had to mention her family. They're not friends, they barely know each other. She feels Beyonce went out of her way to tell the world she's from the upper class and the Jacksons were like a bunch of dirty gutter rats. Janet is proud of her family and how they came from nothing and became superstars. Not only is Janet telling everyone who will listen that Beyonce has a lot of growing up to do and she needs to stop trying to impress everyone, she's planning to confront Beyonce herself and read her the riot act. Now, it was also rumored that Beyonce's sister Solange commented on Janet's reaction. During a dinner conversation with friends, a source claimed that Solange almost laughed when the subject was brought up, saying, "Whatever, Beyonce ain't scared of Janet. All my sister did was tell the truth. She wasn't trying to hurt nobody." Now, this was all alleged. We can't confirm whether or not this was real, but Beyonce's comments about Janet's family was definitely real. But looking at the context of the interview, Beyonce was basically trying to say that she did not have a hard life growing up. The Jackson family, on the other hand, did have to struggle, and a lot of people saw the story of their come up on the Jacksons' American dream. Their father, Joe Jackson, was painted as a tyrant who pushed his children to get out of the hood. And while it was admirable what he was able to do with his family, he didn't always get the best coverage in the media. And Beyonce probably didn't want her family to be viewed in that same negative light, which is probably why she made the comment she made. It seemed like it came from an innocent place, but still Janet did not like it at all. And understandably so, because Janet would have never said anything like that about Beyonce or her family. In fact, when she was asked about Beyonce and her father Matthew, her comments were a bit more positive and respectful.
And Miss Jackson, when you see somebody like Beyonce, whose dad...
Oh, now you call her Miss Jackson. That's
I'm sorry.
Miss Jackson.
I had to say Miss Jackson. I had to say Miss Jackson. When you see Beyonce and how strong her father's influence on her career is, do you see like kind of a similarity on the point where she's going to have to break away from him the same way you had to break away from your father?
Good question.
Every situation is different. I could see where the inspiration came from. I could see that part of it, that aspect of it. Every situation is different. I don't know. I don't know their relationship. I think they're doing a very wonderful job together, and hopefully it won't happen. It doesn't happen with everyone.
After this whole controversy, Beyonce still continued to acknowledge Janet as one of her inspirations.
The show starts off with an amazing Michael Jackson tribute. What are you hoping to see up on stage?
Well, I know that his sister, who is one of my biggest inspirations, I'm very excited to see her. It's going to be very emotional for her and for all of us.
You look in the audience and you see this little girl that was me when I was looking at Michael or Janet or Tina Turner. And it's no way I'm not going to give 100% because I remember being that girl.
Beyonce also dressed up as Janet Jackson for Halloween, and she dressed her daughter, Blue Ivy, as Michael Jackson, which showed that her admiration for the Jacksons was still very strong. Not only that, she showed up to see Janet Jackson at her Unbreakable World Tour. Beyonce didn't get a chance to actually take a picture with Janet, but she did take a picture with Janet's child backup dancers. In 2019, she also saw Janet at her Las Vegas show with Kelly Rowland. Interestingly enough, Janet took several pictures with Kelly, but she did not take any pictures with Beyonce. But it is possible that maybe Beyonce left the show early, so she didn't get to greet Janet. Or maybe she opted not to take a picture. Who knows? But it is noticeable that Janet hasn't publicly acknowledged Beyonce since that interview. Janet has acknowledged other artists who have mentioned her. For example, she acknowledged Taylor Swift when Taylor mentioned her name in her song Snow on the Beach. But when Beyonce mentioned her on her Break My Soul remix, it was crickets from Janet's end. Now, I'm not gonna assume that Janet is still upset with Beyonce over those comments, but it is noticeable that she hasn't really acknowledged Beyonce. Either way, Beyonce still has a lot of respect for Janet, and I'm pretty sure Janet respects Beyonce's talent as well. Both of these women are icons and legends in their own right. They're trailblazers, and they are some of the most influential artists of their respective generations. So it's hard to imagine that the respect they have for each other as artists would be lost. But hopefully the miscommunication between them can be resolved, because it would be nice to see Beyonce and Janet link up again. Don't you think? Anyway, tell me what y'all think about this video down below. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video if you care. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.